The morning light filtered through the massive glass dome of the Galactic Academic Institute's Xenobotany Laboratory. Jinwoo Kim adjusted his uniform and looked around at the impressive space. Plants from hundreds of different worlds grew in carefully controlled sections. Some glowed with strange colors, others moved without any wind, and a few seemed to watch the students as they walked by. Today was the final exam for Professor Kithera's class on dangerous plants. Jinwoo had studied hard for this test. He knew about the flesh-eating vines from Kepler 442b and the mind-controlling flowers from the Vega system. He felt ready. "Good morning, students." Professor Kithera's deep voice rumbled through the lab. The ancient tree-like being stood nearly 3 meters tall. Her bark-covered skin was dark brown with patches of green moss. Hundreds of small branches grew from her arms and head like hair made of twigs. Jinwoo took his seat at one of the examination tables. Around him, his alien classmates settled into their own specially designed chairs. Veltar, the crystalline being from the Helix Nebula, glowed with a soft blue light. Their body looked like someone had carved a person from pure sapphire. Kix floated near their desk as a cloud of yellow gas. They came from the methane storms of Titan 7 and could change colors to show emotions. Ran, the insectoid student, clicked their mandibles nervously. They looked like a giant praying mantis wearing tiny glasses. Their green exoskeleton gleamed under the lab lights. Eula sat in her water-filled chair, her transparent skin showing the blue veins underneath. Gills on her neck fluttered as she breathed the special water mixture. "Today's examination is simple," Professor Kithera announced. "I will place a plant specimen at each of your stations. You must identify the species, classify its danger level, and recommend proper containment procedures." The professor's branch-like arms extended, carrying small potted plants to each student's desk. Jinwoo watched as she approached his table. The plant she set down looked completely ordinary. It was small, maybe 20 centimeters tall, with dark green leaves and tiny white buds that looked ready to bloom. "You have 1 hour," Professor Kithera said. "Begin now." Jinwoo leaned forward to examine his specimen more closely. The leaves were oval-shaped with smooth edges. The stems were thin but sturdy. The white buds clustered at the ends of the branches, each one about the size of his thumbnail. Everything about the plant seemed familiar, though he could not place exactly why. He reached for his identification scanner when he heard a sharp gasp from Veltar's station. The crystalline being's blue glow suddenly dimmed to almost black. Their voice came out as a harmonic whisper of fear. "Professor Kithera," Veltar called out, their crystal body trembling. "This cannot be correct." More gasps echoed around the lab. Kix's yellow gas form shifted rapidly to deep purple clouds. Rand's antennae flattened against their head as they backed away from their desk. Eula's gills pumped frantically as she pushed her chair as far from her plant as possible. "What is wrong?" Professor Kithera asked, though her voice carried a note of concern. "Professor," Rand clicked urgently, their translator working to convert the rapid insect sounds into galactic standard. "This is a Class 7 extinction-level plant. This is Mortem floris. Why would you bring such a dangerous specimen into the academy?" Jinwoo looked from his classmates to his own plant. They all had the same species. The small green plant with white buds sat innocently on his desk while his friends acted like it might explode at any moment. An entire colony ship was wiped out by one of these plants 300 years ago, Eula said, her voice bubbling through her breathing apparatus. "The spores dissolved every living thing on board in minutes. The Planetary Defense Force uses weaponized versions of these flowers," Veltar added, their crystal body now completely dark with terror. "One bloom can clear a battlefield of all organic life." Jinwoo frowned and looked at his plant again. It really did look familiar. The leaf shape, the way the buds formed, even the slight sweet smell that came from it reminded him of something from home. But his classmates were talking about it like it was a weapon of mass destruction. "Students, please remain calm," Professor Kithera said, though she too seemed concerned. Her bark was darkening and thickening, a defensive response Jinwoo had read about. "The specimens are contained within safety fields." "But Professor," Kix's colors shifted to alarmed orange. "Student Kim is reaching toward his specimen." Everyone turned to look at Jinwoo. He had indeed been extending his hand toward the plant, driven by curiosity and the nagging feeling that he knew what it was. Now 6 pairs of alien eyes, plus Professor Kithera's hundreds of tiny eye spots, stared at him in horror. "Jinwoo, no!" Veltar's harmonic voice cracked with panic.
Do not touch the mortem floris.
The oils on the leaves are deadly to most species. But it looks so familiar, Jinwoo said, pulling his hand back slightly. Are you sure this is dangerous? It reminds me of something from Earth. Your planet must have some very dangerous flora, Ran observed, their large compound eyes reflecting the lab lights. But please do not risk your life for curiosity. As they spoke, Jinwoo noticed something happening to his plant. The tiny white buds were beginning to open, delicate petals unfurled slowly, revealing the inside of each flower. A gentle, sweet fragrance began to drift into the air around his desk. Oh no, Eula whispered, her gills sealing shut automatically. It is beginning to bloom. The other students immediately activated their emergency containment protocols. Veltar crystallized into a protective shell. Kix dispersed their gas form to be as thin as possible. Ran's wings buzzed as they prepared to fly away. Eula held her breath and sealed every opening in her breathing system. But Jinwoo just sat there watching the beautiful white flowers open. Each bloom had 5 delicate petals arranged around a yellow center. The sweet smell grew stronger, and instead of being alarmed, Jinwoo found it pleasant and calming. Student Kim, Professor Kethara's voice boomed through the lab as alarm sirens began to wail. Step away from the specimen immediately. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the dome. Automated systems began sealing the lab sections. Through the speakers, a mechanical voice announced, Biological hazard detected. All personnel evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. But Jinwoo remained in his seat staring at the now fully bloomed flowers. The sweet scent filled his nostrils, and suddenly he knew exactly what he was looking at. His grandmother's garden in Busan. Summer afternoons spent helping her water the plants. The exact same white flowers, the same green leaves, the same wonderful smell that would drift through their house on warm evenings. Wait, he said quietly. Then louder as understanding dawned on him. Everyone wait! I think there has been a mistake. But his voice was drowned out by the evacuation alarms and the sounds of his panicked classmates, trying to get as far away from the deadly plants as possible. Professor Kethara's ancient form was moving toward him with surprising speed, her branch arms reaching out to pull him to safety. As the chaos erupted around him, Jinwoo looked down at the innocent little plant with its beautiful white flowers. He was almost certain now, but he needed to be sure. There was one test that would prove his theory, though his classmates would probably think he had lost his mind. The evacuation continued around him as Jinwoo Kim sat calmly next to what the galaxy considered one of the most dangerous plants in known space, and all he could think about was his grandmother's jasmine tea. The flowers opened completely, their white petals spreading wide like tiny stars. A cloud of what looked like golden dust drifted up from the blooms. To every alien in the laboratory, this was the moment of death. The deadly spores of mortem floris were now floating free in the air. Jinwoo breathed in deeply through his nose. The sweet, familiar scent filled his lungs. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering summer evenings on his grandmother's porch. She would serve jasmine tea in small white cups while the garden filled the air with this exact same fragrance. Student Kim has been exposed. Veltar's crystalline voice rang out in panic. Their body had formed a complete shell like a sapphire egg with eyes. The spores are in his respiratory system. The emergency alarms grew louder. Red lights flashed throughout the massive dome. Automated systems began sealing air vents and activating emergency atmospheric cleaning procedures. Through the glass walls, Jinwoo could see other students from different classes being evacuated from nearby laboratories. Kix had spread their gaseous form so thin they were barely visible. Just a faint purple shimmer in the air. Why is he not collapsing? Their voice came as a whisper through the lab's speakers. The cellular breakdown should have begun already. Ran's wings buzzed frantically as they hovered near the ceiling, as far from the plants as possible. Perhaps human physiology reacts differently. They clicked rapidly. The toxins might work more slowly on his species. Professor Kethara's massive form approached Jinwoo's station, her bark-like skin now thick and hardened into defensive mode. Hundreds of tiny eye spots on her branches focused on him, scanning for signs of the poisoning that should have killed him by now. Student Kim, her voice rumbled with concern, you must move away from the specimen. Even if your species has some resistance, prolonged exposure will overcome any natural defenses. But Jinwoo remained seated, looking perfectly comfortable. The golden spores continued to drift around him like glittering dust in the sunlight. He reached up and brushed some of the particles from his hair, causing another wave of gasps from his classmates. He touched the spores directly. Eula's voice bubbled with horror from her sealed water chamber. Her gills remained tightly closed, and she was breathing from emergency oxygen reserves. No organic material can survive direct contact. Jinwoo turned to address his panicked friends. "I really think you are all mistaken about this plant," he said calmly. "I am almost certain this is not Mortem floris." Student Kim, Professor Cathara, extended a thick branch toward him but stopped short of making contact. "Your confidence is admirable, but my sensors are detecting the exact chemical signature of Mortem floris toxins. Please allow me to escort you to the medical bay." "What if I told you," Jinwoo said, standing up slowly from his chair, "that humans have been living with this plant for over 1,000 years?" The statement sent another shockwave through the laboratory. Feltar's crystalline shell cracked slightly in surprise. Kix's dispersed form began to swirl in confused patterns. Rand's hovering became unsteady as they processed this information. "That is impossible," Rand clicked. "No species could survive prolonged exposure to Mortem floris. The historical records are clear." "Then maybe," Jinwoo said, reaching toward the plant again, "this is not Mortem floris." "Jinwoo, no," multiple voices called out as he gently touched one of the white flowers. The delicate petals felt soft under his fingertip, and more of the golden pollen stuck to his skin. Professor Cathara's sensors went into overdrive, scanning Jinwoo for any signs of cellular damage, toxin absorption, or biological breakdown. Her readings showed none of the expected reactions. Instead, his vital signs indicated relaxation and calm. "This is unprecedented," she murmured, her scientific curiosity beginning to overcome her protective instincts. "Student Kim, describe what you are experiencing." "I feel fine," Jinwoo said honestly. "Actually, I feel relaxed. The smell is very pleasant. It reminds me of home." He paused, looking at the beautiful white flowers. "Professor, may I ask where this specimen came from?" "It was collected from a quarantined world in the Outer Rim," Professor Cathara replied, her sensors still focused on him. "The planet was declared uninhabitable after a Mortem floris outbreak. What was the planet like before the outbreak?" Jinwoo asked. According to the records, she accessed her vast memory banks. It was a pleasant world with a temperate climate. The colonists had established gardens and agricultural centers. They reported that the native flora was surprisingly similar to plants from their home worlds. And what species were the colonists? "They were vegan," Professor Cathara said slowly, referring to a blue-skinned humanoid species known for their sensitivity to plant toxins. They were botanical specialists who chose the planet specifically for its Earth-like plant life. "Earth-like," Jinwoo repeated. "Professor, I think I know what happened." He carefully picked up the potted plant, causing every alien in the room to gasp and retreat further. The white flowers nodded gently as he lifted them, releasing more of the sweet fragrance into the air. "This plant is from Earth," Jinwoo said confidently. "It is called jasmine. Jasminum sambac, to be specific. We call it Arabian jasmine." He held the pot close to his face and inhaled deeply. "It is completely harmless to humans." "That cannot be correct." Feltar's muffled voice came from inside their crystalline shell. "The chemical signatures match Mortem floris exactly." "The chemicals might be the same," Jinwoo agreed, "but the concentration and effects are completely different. What you call deadly toxins, humans call aromatic compounds. What you call tissue-dissolving spores, we call pollen." Professor Cathara's hundreds of sensors continued to monitor Jinwoo as he held the plant. Her readings confirmed that he was telling the truth. The chemical compounds that would kill most known species were having no harmful effect on the human at all. "But how is this possible?" Kix asked, their gaseous forms slowly beginning to condense back to normal density. "Evolution," Jinwoo said simply. "Earth is a very dangerous planet. Humans had to adapt to survive alongside plants and animals that would kill most other species. What you find deadly, we find normal." He set the plant back down on his desk and smiled at his classmates. "In fact, humans do not just tolerate this plant. We cultivate it. We use it in our gardens, in our ceremonies, and—" He paused, remembering countless evenings with his grandmother. "We make tea from the flowers." The silence that followed this statement was broken only by the continued wailing of the emergency alarms. Every alien in the laboratory stared at Jinwoo as if he had just claimed he could breathe in space. You consume it? Rand's translator struggled with the concept. Voluntarily. We drink liquid infused with the flowers, Jinwoo confirmed. It is considered a delicacy. Very relaxing and peaceful. Professor Kethara's ancient mind processed this information, a species that not only survived exposure to what others considered a planet killer, but actually consumed it for pleasure. It explained so much about the humans who had recently joined the galactic community. Student Kim, she said slowly, would you be willing to demonstrate this tea preparation? Under controlled conditions, of course. The suggestion caused another wave of panic among the other students, but Jinwoo just smiled. I would be happy to, Professor. But I will need a few supplies from the human quarters. The emergency alarms finally stopped wailing, but the red warning lights continued to flash throughout the laboratory. Professor Kethara had convinced the safety systems that the situation was under control, though many of her sensors remained focused on Jinwoo and the blooming plant. Before we proceed with any demonstrations, Professor Kethara said, her voice carrying both scientific curiosity and caution, I must understand exactly what we are dealing with. She extended several specialized scanning branches toward the plant. Advanced sensors analyzed every molecule, every chemical compound, every biological structure. The results appeared on holographic displays around the laboratory. Fascinating, she murmured as data streams flowed across the screens. The molecular structure is indeed identical to mortem flora samples in our database. However, the concentration levels are significantly different. Veltar had cautiously emerged from their protective crystalline shell, though their body remained dim with worry. How can the same compounds be deadly to some species but harmless to others? Think about it from an evolutionary perspective, Jinwoo explained, settling back into his chair. The jasmine flowers continued to release their gentle fragrance around him. Every planet develops differently. On Earth, humans evolved alongside plants that produce these exact compounds. He gestured to the holographic displays showing the chemical analysis. What you see as toxins, human bodies process as natural aromatics. Our liver breaks down these compounds easily. Our respiratory system filters them without damage. Kicks, now back to their normal yellow coloration, drifted closer. But the historical records show that mortem floras killed an entire colony. How do you explain that? The colonists were vegan, right? Jinwoo asked. Blue-skinned humanoids? Correct, Professor Kethara confirmed. Vegan physiology is completely different from human physiology, Jinwoo continued. They evolved on a world with very mild plant life. Their bodies never developed resistance to strong botanical compounds. When they encountered earth plants that had spread to their colony world, their systems could not handle it. Rand's compound eyes focused intently on Jinwoo. So what you are saying is that this plant is not inherently deadly. It is only deadly to species that did not evolve with it. Exactly, Jinwoo smiled. It is like how some humans cannot drink milk but others can, or how chocolate is deadly to dogs but safe for humans. Evolution creates different tolerances. Professor Kethara's ancient mind processed this revelation. In all her centuries of studying dangerous flora, she had always assumed that toxicity was universal. The concept that a plant could be harmless to one species while being lethal to another, based on evolutionary adaptation, was revolutionary. This changes everything. We know about botanical classification, she said slowly. We have been categorizing plants as universally dangerous without considering species-specific evolution. Eula had cautiously opened her gills again, though she remained in her protective water chamber. But Student Kim, how can you be certain this plant is safe for human consumption? Because, Jinwoo said, reaching into his pocket, I brought some from home. He pulled out a small packet of dried jasmine flowers. The other students immediately tensed, but Jinwoo calmly opened the packet and held it up for them to see. Dried jasmine flowers, he explained. My grandmother sent these to me last month. She grows them in her garden in Busan. I have been drinking jasmine tea since I was a child. The revelation that Jinwoo had been carrying what they considered biological weapons in his pocket for weeks sent another shock. Through his classmates, Veltar's crystalline body flickered with amazement and confusion. You have been exposed to these compounds regularly for years? They asked. Not just exposed, Jinwoo corrected. I actively seek them out. Jasmine tea is one of my favorite drinks. It helps me relax when I am studying. He held up one of the dried flowers next to the fresh bloom on his desk. See, same plant, same compounds, same effect. The only difference is that one is fresh and one is dried for preservation. Professor Kethara's sensors compared the fresh and dried specimens. Indeed, they showed identical chemical signatures, just in different concentrations due to the drying process. Student Kim, she said carefully, you mentioned tea preparation. Can you explain this process? Of course, Jinwoo said enthusiastically. Jasmine tea is very popular on Earth. There are many different ways to prepare it, but the most common method is simple. He stood up and moved to the laboratory's communication panel. I need to contact Hyejin Park in the human quarters. She can bring me the supplies I need. Wait, Ran clicked nervously. You want to bring more of these deadly compounds into the laboratory? They are not deadly to humans, Jinwoo reminded them patiently. And if you want to understand how humans interact with plants that other species find dangerous, this is the perfect demonstration. Professor Kethara considered this. From a scientific standpoint, the opportunity was unprecedented, a chance to observe how humans safely processed compounds that were lethal to most known species could revolutionize their understanding of interspecies biology. Very well, she decided. Student Kim, you may contact your human quarters. However, we will maintain full safety protocols and monitoring throughout the demonstration. Jinwoo activated the communication panel. Hyejin, this is Jinwoo in the Xenobotany lab. I need a favor. Hyejin Park's holographic image appeared above the panel. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair. Jinwoo, how is your exam going? It is going very well, but I need some supplies for a demonstration. Can you bring me a tea set, some hot water, and maybe some dried jasmine flowers if we have any? Hyejin raised an eyebrow. Jasmine tea? In the middle of your final exam? It is hard to explain, Jinwoo grinned. Let us just say my classmates are very interested in human food culture. I will be right there, Hyejin said, her image disappearing. Jinwoo turned back to his classmates, who had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement. You are really going to consume a beverage made from what we consider one of the most dangerous plants in the galaxy. Kik stated more than asked. I am going to share it with all of you, Jinwoo corrected. If you want to try it, of course. With proper safety equipment. The idea of actually consuming, even in filtered form, what they had always considered a weapon of mass destruction was both terrifying and fascinating to the alien students. This human, Beltar said quietly to the others, is either the bravest being in the galaxy or the most insane. Knowing humans, Professor Kethara rumbled with what might have been amusement. It is probably both. 20 minutes later, a service drone arrived at the laboratory carrying a tray of supplies. Hyejin had sent everything Jinwoo requested. A simple white ceramic teapot, several small cups, a thermal container of hot water, and a bag of dried jasmine flowers. The alien students watched with fascination and horror as Jinwoo unpacked what they considered to be the components of an elaborate suicide ritual. Professor Kethara's sensors tracked every movement, ready to intervene if the human showed any signs of distress. First, Jinwoo explained as he arranged the items on his laboratory table, we need to prepare the teapot. He poured a small amount of hot water into the ceramic pot, swirled it around, then poured it out. This warms the pot and cleans it. Temperature is very important for jasmine tea. Veltar's crystalline body pulsed with nervous blue light. Student Kim, are you certain about this procedure? Our medical bay is prepared for emergency treatment. But if these compounds work as quickly as our data suggests, I appreciate your concern, Jinwoo said with a smile. But I have been drinking jasmine tea since I was 5 years old. My grandmother taught me this exact method. He opened the bag of dried jasmine flowers and poured a small amount into his palm. The tiny dried buds looked innocent enough, but every alien in the room could detect the same molecular signatures that their databases identified as lethal toxins. For jasmine tea, we use about 1 teaspoon of flowers per cup. Jinwoo continued his explanation. Too much and the flavor becomes bitter. Too little and you cannot taste the jasmine. Kix's gaseous form swirled with anxious orange colors. The concentration of toxic compounds must be carefully controlled. Well, yes, Jinwoo agreed, though he was thinking about flavor rather than toxicity. But not for the reasons you think. It is about taste, not safety. He placed the dried flowers into the teapot. The sweet, familiar scent began to fill the air around his station. Professor Kethara's sensors detected an immediate increase in the aromatic compounds that her database classified as dangerous. Now we add the water, Jinwoo said, lifting the thermal container. The temperature should be about 80 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to release the flower oils, but not so hot that it destroys the delicate flavors. He poured the water slowly over the jasmine flowers. Steam rose from the teapot, carrying with it the concentrated essence of what the Galactic database considered one of the most dangerous plants in known space. Rand's wings buzzed nervously. Student Kim, the atmospheric sensors are detecting a significant increase in airborne toxins. That is just the tea steeping, Jinwoo explained calmly. We let it sit for about 3 minutes. This allows the water to absorb the flower oils and create the proper flavor. While they waited, Jinwoo shared stories about jasmine tea's role in human culture. In China, jasmine tea has been popular for over 1,000 years. In my grandmother's region of Korea, it is traditional to serve jasmine tea to honored guests. Your species honors guests by serving them poison? Eula asked, her gills fluttering with confusion. We honor guests by sharing something beautiful and peaceful. Jinwoo corrected gently. Jasmine tea is meant to promote calm and happiness. It is a social drink, something we share when we want to connect with others. Professor Cathara found this cultural information as fascinating as the biological data. So this consumption ritual serves a social bonding function in human society. Exactly, Jinwoo nodded. Tea ceremony is about more than just drinking. It is about taking time to be present with others, to slow down and appreciate simple pleasures. The timer on his personal device chimed softly. 3 minutes, he announced. The tea is ready. He lifted the teapot and poured the golden liquid into one of the small cups. The tea was pale yellow with a delicate, sweet aroma. To the alien students, he might as well have been pouring liquid death into a cup. The first cup always goes to the eldest or most honored person present, Jinwoo said, looking at Professor Cathara. But since you cannot safely consume it, I will taste it first to show that it is properly prepared. He lifted the small cup to his lips and took a sip. The warm tea flowed over his tongue, carrying the gentle floral notes he remembered from countless afternoons with his grandmother. He closed his eyes for a moment, savoring both the taste and the memories. Perfect, he said, opening his eyes to find every sensor in the laboratory focused on him. Professor Cathara's readings showed no signs of cellular damage, no toxin absorption, no biological breakdown. Instead, Jinwoo's vital signs indicated relaxation and contentment. The flavor is subtle, he continued, taking another sip. Floral and sweet, but not overwhelming. It should taste like flower smell, if that makes sense. It does not make sense, Rand clicked rapidly. You are voluntarily consuming compounds that would kill me in seconds. And I am not just surviving, Jinwoo pointed out. I am enjoying it. This is one of my favorite drinks. He poured tea into the remaining cups. Now I know that none of you can safely drink jasmine tea the way humans do. But if you are interested in trying it, we can use the laboratory's filtration systems. Professor Cathara extended a sampling branch toward one of the cups. Her biological filters could separate harmful compounds while allowing safe molecules through. This is unprecedented, she murmured as she analyzed the tea. The same liquid that would be lethal to my species is providing you with nutrition and pleasure. Would you like to try some? Jinwoo asked his classmates. We can use your species-specific filter systems to remove the compounds that would be harmful to you, while letting you experience the flavors that are safe. Veltar was the first to volunteer. If this is how humans achieve their legendary adaptability, their crystalline voice resonated. Perhaps we should try to understand it. Using a specialized atmospheric filter that could process gases safely for crystalline beings, Veltar sampled the tea's aroma. Their body began to glow with soft, harmonious colors. It is pleasant, they admitted with surprise. The aromatic compounds that pass through our filters create a soothing resonance. Encouraged by Veltar's positive reaction, the other students began to experiment with their own filtration systems. Kix used a molecular separator to experience the tea's gaseous components. Ran employed a chemical analyzer to identify safe flavor compounds. Eula filtered the tea through her water purification system. Each species experienced the jasmine tea differently, but all found something appealing in the aspects they could safely process. This is remarkable, Professor Cathara observed. The same plant that we have classified as universally dangerous contains compounds that multiple species can enjoy when properly filtered. That is the point, Jinwoo said, pouring himself another cup. Humans just happen to be naturally equipped with the right filters. What you need machines to do safely, our bodies do automatically. As the impromptu tea ceremony continued, the alien students began to understand something fundamental about human biology and culture. Where other species saw only danger, humans had found beauty, flavor, and social connection. The laboratory had transformed from a place of panic into something resembling a peaceful gathering. Each alien student had found a way to safely experience some aspect of the jasmine tea, using their species' specialized equipment and filters. The emergency lights had been turned off, and normal lighting filled the dome once again. Veltar's crystalline body now glowed with soft, shifting colors that reminded Jinwoo of aurora lights. The harmonic frequencies created by the filtered aromatic compounds are quite beautiful, they said. I understand why humans find this experience pleasant. Through their molecular separator, Kix had been able to sample the gaseous components of the tea. Their cloud-like form had settled into gentle blues and greens. The chemical complexity is fascinating, they observed. So many different compounds working together to create a unified experience. Ran had used the laboratory's analytical equipment to break down the tea into its component parts, allowing them to safely experience the flavor elements that would not harm their insectoid physiology. The sweetness compounds trigger positive responses in our neural centers, they clicked thoughtfully. It is no wonder humans developed social rituals around this beverage. Eula had been the most cautious, but even she had found a way to appreciate the jasmine tea through her aquatic filtration systems. The water-soluble elements create pleasant currents in our sensory channels, she bubbled softly. It is like swimming through a garden. Professor Kithara had been continuously monitoring all of them throughout the experiment. Her ancient mind was processing not just the biological data, but the cultural implications of what they had discovered. Student Kim, she said finally, what you have shown us today goes far beyond a simple examination answer. You have revealed a fundamental gap in our understanding of interspecies biology. Jinwoo finished his third cup of tea and smiled. I just shared something my grandmother taught me. I did not expect it to be such a big discovery. But that is exactly the point, Professor Kithara continued. For centuries, we have classified plants based on their effects on the first species to encounter them. We never considered that different evolutionary paths might create completely different relationships with the same organisms. She gestured to the jasmine plant, still blooming peacefully on Jinwoo's desk. This plant has been responsible for declaring an entire world uninhabitable. Colony ships have been diverted from systems where it grows wild. Trade routes have been established to avoid areas of jasmine cultivation. And meanwhile, Veltar added, their crystals chiming with amusement. Humans have been growing it in their gardens and serving it to guests. The implications were staggering. How many worlds had been unnecessarily abandoned? How many plants had been classified as dangerous when they might be harmless or even beneficial to other species? We need to completely revise our botanical classification system, Professor Kithara decided. Species-specific reactions must be considered for every plant in our database. Kix swirled thoughtfully. This explains so much about human behavior in the galaxy. Your species consistently enters environments that other races consider too dangerous to survive. It is not that we are fearless, Jinwoo explained. We just have different definitions of dangerous. What seems like a deadly threat to you might be completely normal to us. Like how you eat capsaicin, Ran observed, referring to the compound that makes peppers spicy. Most species consider it a chemical weapon, but humans consume it for pleasure. Exactly, Jinwoo laughed. Or how we keep predatory animals as companions, or how we enjoy extreme weather conditions that would kill most beings. Professor Kithara was already making plans. I will need to contact the Galactic Botanical Survey immediately. Every plant in the dangerous species database will need to be retested with human subjects. You might want to start with Earth plants that have spread to other worlds, Jinwoo suggested. There are probably dozens of species that have been misclassified as dangerous, when they are really just incompatible with certain alien biologies. As the formal class period came to an end, the students began to clean up their impromptu tea ceremony. Jinwoo carefully packed away his grandmother's dried jasmine flowers, while his classmates deactivated their various filtration and analysis equipment. Student Kim, Veltar said as they prepared to leave, would it be possible for you to share more of these human botanical experiences? For scientific purposes, of course. I would be happy to, Jinwoo replied. My grandmother sent me enough dried flowers to last the whole semester, and I know several other tea preparation methods. Just promise us you will warn us before you bring anything truly dangerous, Eula requested. I am not sure our cardiovascular systems could handle another surprise like this one. I will, Jinwoo promised, though he was already thinking about the ginseng tea in his dormitory room, and the green tea his mother had packed for him, and the chrysanthemum flowers he had been saving for a special occasion. Professor Kathara approached his desk as the other students filed out. Student Kim, I am changing your examination grade to the highest possible mark. Not only did you correctly identify your specimen, but you have revolutionized our entire field of study. Thank you, Professor, Jinwoo said, carefully picking up the blooming jasmine plant. What will happen to this one? It will become the first specimen in our new research category, she replied. Plants that are dangerous to some species but beneficial to others. Would you be willing to help maintain it? Of course, Jinwoo smiled. Though you should know, jasmine plants are very easy to care for. Just water, sunlight, and patience. As he left the laboratory, Jinwoo passed groups of alien students who stared at him with a mixture of awe and confusion. Word had already spread throughout the institute that the human student had survived direct exposure to mortem florus and then consumed it for pleasure. His personal communicator chimed with a message from his grandmother. How are your studies going, Jinwoo? I hope you are remembering to drink your tea. He typed back. Just taught my xenobotany class about jasmine tea, Halmoni. They think I am crazy. Her reply came quickly. Good, that means you are doing it right. A little madness makes life interesting. Walking back to his dormitory through the corridors of the Galactic Academic Institute, Jinwoo reflected on the day's events. He had come to take a simple final examination and ended up challenging centuries of scientific assumptions. But that, he realized, was very human indeed. His species had always had a talent for finding opportunity in what others considered impossible, for making homes in places others deemed uninhabitable, and for discovering beauty and nourishment in things that frightened everyone else. As he reached his room, Jinwoo looked down at the jasmine plant in his hands. Its white flowers had fully opened now, filling the air around him with their sweet perfume. Tomorrow, he decided, he would brew tea for his dormitory neighbors. The Andromedan student down the hall had been curious about human culture, and the Centaurian exchange student had never experienced any earth plants. After all, the best way to understand humans, Jinwoo had learned, was not through books or lectures, but through sharing a simple cup of tea and discovering that what seems impossible to everyone else is just another Tuesday afternoon for humanity.